I'm Mark Caro, and welcome to episode 220 of Caropop. If you'd like to throw some support and help keep this thing going, please go to caropop.com. Our guest this week is a groundbreaking chef responsible for some of the best food I've ever eaten, Rick Bayless of Chicago's Frontera Grill, and much more. Chef Bayless came by his profession and passion naturally, having worked in his parents' barbecue restaurant in Oklahoma City. Talking in person in a conference room upstairs from Frontera Grill, he describes how he pivoted to regional Mexican food in all its glories, and how his linguistics master's degree from the University of Michigan factored in. Rick Bayless and his wife, Deann, opened Frontera Grill in Chicago's River North neighborhood in March of 1987. That was 5 months before Charlie Trotter opened his eponymous high-end restaurant in Lincoln Park. Bayless discusses how those places transformed the way people in Chicago and beyond ate. Bayless was serving authentic, complexly flavored Mexican dishes featuring hard-to-source ingredients, all rarities on the Chicago dining scene. The reaction of Frontera's first guests illustrates the preconceptions it had to upend. Yet Frontera was an out-of-the-gate success, and its popularity enabled the Baylesses to push the boundaries of fine dining by opening Topolobampo in an adjacent space in 1989. The latter restaurant became a favorite date spot for a young Illinois Senator, Barack Obama, and his wife, Michelle. Bayless describes their visits and dining room preferences, as well as his experience years later serving a state dinner for the visiting Mexican president while the Obamas were in the White House. What was that kitchen like? Bayless has received many accolades, including being named the James Beard Foundation's Outstanding Chef of 1995. The Beard Awards also honored Frontera Grill as the country's Outstanding Restaurant of 2007, and Topolobampo took home the same award for 2017. Bayless won Season 1 of Top Chef Masters on Bravo as well, and he discusses here how pressurized that experience felt. Many people have gotten to know Bayless through his cookbooks and his PBS series Mexico, One Plate at a Time, which ran for 12 seasons and 169 episodes between 2000 and 2019. Many travelers have experienced Bayless's food through his Tortas Frontera outposts at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. It's the best airport food I've eaten for breakfast or lunch. The bean-to-cup hot chocolate varieties at Joko, Bayless's casual corner spot in the same building as Frontera and Topolobampo, also are on my best of list. He used to make my favorite granola as well, but that went away, and he explains what happened here. Oh, and since late 2018, Bayless has run the Mezcal Bar, Bar Sotano, in the basement beneath Frontera Grill. It's another winner, with more creative dishes to match up with the acclaimed cocktails. What lasting effects did the pandemic have on his restaurants, the customers as well as the staffing? How do Bayless and his team plan to mark Frontera Grill's 40th anniversary next year? Is he planning any more theater productions like Cascabel, in which the chef acted, danced, and oversaw a multi-course meal served to the audience? What is his litmus test dish when he visits another Mexican restaurant? A lively, deeply knowledgeable conversationalist, the chef bats around these topics and much more. Please enjoy this Caropop conversation with Rick Bayless. Well, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it,
This
Chef.
is so fun. Thank you for inviting me.
I mean, I remember, and when Frontera Grill opened,
Now you're dating
downstairs.
yourself.
I am dating myself totally, but it was like the hot restaurant. It was an early-ish 87.
Yes.
And it was just like wow, this sort of mind-blowing Mexican food. And then sort of coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, I think Charlie Trotter's opened, like 6 months later?
6 months after we did,
yeah. Did you have a sense at that time that there was something happening in Chicago? Like, do you feel like these things were connected, or really you just happened to be, prominent, very different chefs?
We had a 3 or 4 chef-owned restaurants, if you can believe that. That was all we had in Chicago. And so I knew all the chefs that owned their own restaurants, because most restaurants were run by restaurateurs and they hired a chef and that sort of thing. But this whole notion of a chef-owned restaurant was pretty new in 87. We had really learned and been inspired by Alice Waters at Chez Panisse in Berkeley and Wolfgang Puck in Spago in LA. And lots of people were starting to think about, I, as a chef, want to own my own restaurant and really express my art. And I want to be in charge of all of this stuff. And we were just starting to get a broader palette of ingredients, they were not very available. But the really great thing for us was that we were doing Mexican food in a town that had amazing Mexican ingredients coming into it already. And that made my job way easier because, we have the second largest Mexican population in the country here in Chicago. And in fact, a third of the population of Chicago now is Latino. So we had the opportunity to really to be on the shoulders of all of that immigration and the ingredients that were brought in.
And by the time you opened Frontera Grill, you'd already done a lot of work in that area. I mean, you had a television series before then, like in the 70s, right?
Oh, we don't need to talk about that. Well, yes, back in the late 70s, I did 26 shows for Bowling Green, Ohio's public television station because they had a budget to do it, and I was teaching Mexican food, and I had lived in Mexico, done my undergraduate degree in Latin American culture and Spanish language, and I knew something about Mexico and its cuisine, and I loved cooking and teaching about food, and so I did that series. It's cringeworthy now.
Very definitely. So I don't know.
No one can see it now. Okay, there's no place that you can access any of it. I'm very thankful for that. But then I had done that. But then my wife and I had moved to Mexico. We had lived in Mexico for 5 years, working on our first cookbook, which was all about regional Mexican cooking. And we had traveled to every single state in the Mexican Republic and cooked with local cooks and really learned the cuisine from the ground up.
Yeah, I mean, my bringing up the research you did for the show and everything else is to say that when you opened Frontera Grill, you had a lot of experience, even though you were first-time chef owner, because you just been traveling and cooking and doing all of this other stuff. So,
but I'd also grown up in the restaurant business, right. And my father was disabled when I was in high school, and my mother and I took over our family's restaurant. And from the time I was 16, I worked full-time in the restaurant. I went to the undergrad just a little distance from my home and worked full-time. So I had worked in restaurants a lot in my life, literally since I was a little kid, because I loved it. I still love the restaurant business. It still gets me out of bed every morning because it changes, it's varied. I work with an incredible group of people, and what can I say? I want to go to work every day.
Yeah. So your family restaurant was barbecue.
Barbecue, yeah. We did Oklahoma-style barbecue. I know that it's not one of the major barbecue styles in the U.S., but it's pretty easy to describe it. It very much like like Kansas City barbecue sauce is. It sort of goes off of that style, but like Texas style barbecue, it's dry cured, but we don't do brisket much in Oklahoma. We didn't then. A lot of the new barbecue places in Oklahoma now do brisket, but when I was growing up, brisket was not something we did at all. It was our focus was pork ribs, and so dry cured and served with sauce on the side, not drowned in sauce like up in Kansas City.
Did you love barbecue, or was that just the family business and that was the thing you were used to?
That's a very interesting question. I love barbecue for what it is, but it's not my passion in life. And I know so many people for whom, barbecue is everything to them. And I grew up in it. I loved it. I ate it every single day. But at the same time, I didn't have the passion for it that would make me want to take over my parents' restaurant and maybe open new ones and stuff like that.
So I'll just mention him briefly because your brother worked at the Tribune with me when I was there. Did not go into the culinary side of things. Was it more like the tight unit was like you and your parents were the ones who were kind of keeping the culinary flame going?
For sure. And I have a sister. I had a sister, unfortunately, she passed away during COVID. But she and I were both really into the restaurant business, and she's an amazing cook. So I shared a lot of that with her. And my brother was never interested. when I think he was 14 and I was 12, my father said that we had to work in the restaurant during our summer break, and that lasted about 2 or 3 weeks for him, and he was out of there, and I kept on going. I said, no, I'll figure out a way to get downtown every day to go to the restaurant.
What was it that sparked the passion for Mexican food, where you thought, no, this is what I want?
I was actually interested in food this sounds very highfalutin, food as a cultural expression from the time I was a little kid. I used to hang out in the public library that I could ride my bike to and sit in front of the cookbook section and look at all the international cookbooks that were there. I found that a really fascinating thing. And then I would check something out and go home and experiment with it. I think much to my family's chagrin, they didn't necessarily like all of my trials and tribulations in the kitchen. But I will say that I sort of thought, because we were a very middle-class family, the furthest away I would ever get from home would probably be to get to Mexico. So I really started focusing on that. And when I was 14, I somehow convinced my family to go to Mexico City. And it was the first time we'd ever gotten on an airplane to fly on a vacation. And we went to Mexico City, and I was there for about 3 hours or so. And I thought, my gosh, I think I've come home. Wow. This is my place. It didn't feel like a foreign country. It felt like something was just embracing me and say, this is your spot.
Was there any dish that you had that sort of was like, wow, this is like what I need to do or eat?
It's a very interesting thing that on my first trip to Mexico, I wasn't terribly adventurous with the food because I thought it was going to be like the Casa Bonita Mexican restaurant chain that was close to my house. And that was all Tex-Mex food. And I got to Mexico City and I didn't recognize anything. So I was a little bit timid in exploring things. And I tasted mole while I was there, and I thought it was the most bizarre thing I had ever tasted in my life. Now it's like one of my specialties, and I can't go for very many days without having my mole fix.
That's my litmus test when I go to a place. Is like I have to try the mole.
Of course, because it's the hardest thing to make.
Is it the Oaxacan? I mean, whatever.
Exactly. It is the litmus test of a restaurant. I always want to, when I go to a place that specializes in Mexican food, I will always order a mole dish and then something that is very simple but needs special care to get it exactly right. And that's where you can really sense the detail that people are focusing on in the food.
So what's an example of that?
Something like taquitos, like rolled tacos that are fried. And if they're fried perfectly well, meaning that they're crispy but not shatteringly crisp, if they are done in oil that is fresh oil so that they don't have this sort of darkness to them, darkness and flavor as well as appearance. If the filling for the taquitos is beautifully shredded chicken or pork or whatever it is that they're working with, then you know that they're paying close attention to all the details.
Right. I saw a it was a video that you posted, I think, on your Facebook page about cumin and telling people, hold your horses on the cumin. It's not actually an authentic Mexican ingredient.
It is an authentic Mexican ingredient. It's just they don't use it like the people use it in Texas chili. And everybody thinks that all you have to do is put some cumin in a dish and it tastes Mexican, right? Well, it tastes Tex-Mex. And that is like people, I've spent a ton of time in Oaxaca, and the cooks will always tell you when they're putting cumin in a dish, be very careful. Not too much. You don't really want to taste it. It just offers support in flavors.
If you were going to have in your pantry a handful of ingredients that were going to help you get to that more authentic, flavorful, cuisine, what would you tell people to stock?
Good cumin, I would say.
Right. Not the powder.
Definitely not powdered. And they're... not your sort of standard issue stuff that you buy at the grocery store. Go to somebody like Burlap and Barrel, which has really good single origin spices, and their cumin is second to none. So that, or go over to the Spice House here in Chicago and buy really good cumin there. Then Mexican oregano is the next thing that you really need to have, and that is not related to Mediterranean oregano at all. It's actually in the verbena family.
Interesting.
It has quite a different flavor, and it's often sold in the whole leaf form so that you have to crush it before you use it, which is actually good because it will give you more flavor. Let's see what else. Cans of chipotles for sure. I'm like, when anybody sees me cook really fast, I'm probably going to pull out a can of chipotles because they give you that really true Mexican flavor, but very easy to work with. But then I would also want some dried chilies in my pantry, ancho chilies and guajillo chilies and arbol chilies for sure. So ancho chilies give you sweetness, guajillo chilies give you a brightness, and then arbol chilies give you heat. And so combinations of those three chilies in dishes oftentimes gives it a really, really positive flavor, authentically Mexican flavor.
Nice.
And then cans of fire roasted tomatoes, because the style of cooking that I love the most in Mexico roasts all the tomatoes.
Right. And you might not have time to roast them all yourself when you're doing stuff. In between your discovering your love of mole and this food in Mexico City and opening Frontera Grill, you got a master's in linguistics at the University of Michigan.
Yep.
How did that end up sort of, I don't know, informing anything you did afterwards?
Oh, very clearly informed it. So the thing was that because I realized when I was in college that I would not thrive if I inherited my parents' restaurant, I decided to take my love for culture and go in that direction. But I was really interested in the way a language reflects its culture, because in the Spanish-speaking world, every country pretty much has different vocabulary. Yes, they can sort of understand each other in the Spanish-speaking world, but sometimes when I hear people talk, say, from Puerto Rico or from Cuba, I will say that the words are different, the accent is so different, and what they're doing is to express their particular culture through the language. And even though, you say it's Spanish, it's a distinctive Spanish that is that cultural representation. So I was working on my PhD in linguistics, but from the anthropological side, because that's what I was really interested. How does a language really reflect its particular culture? And the guy that I went to study with at University of Michigan decided to take early retirement, and he was the only person in that department that did the kind of linguistics I was interested in doing. And so I got really frustrated. I tried to work on my PhD dissertation for a little while, and I finally decided I needed to take some time off. And so as you could imagine, what I did for a day job while I was in graduate school was cook and teach cooking and stuff like that. So I said, I'm just going to dive into this for a year and just clear my head and figure out what I need to do. And clearly, what I found was my real passion in life. I traded language for food, and I talked about in all of my classes that I was teaching how cultures express themselves through their food. And then I ended up, after that, moving to Mexico with my wife and living there for 5 years.
Right. Yeah, because you basically, linguistics, you're studying the cultural differences and the subtleties.
Yeah. Well, the way I was doing it, I was. Nobody else in my department was interested in that kind of cultural expression. But I found my real niche, which was talking about food and how it reflects culture.
Did you ever have that professor come down and have your food after years later? Or?
I did. He came here one time. He was very old, and by that point, because, gosh, gosh, between the time that I took that year off from graduate school and the time that we opened our restaurant was about 15 years. So it was quite a long time in there. And I had the opportunity to establish myself really well before he came here. And he seemed genuinely happy for me that I had really found the right place for myself. I'm not sure he thought I was all that good of a student. So I think I found my niche, which I am very happy I found, because as a linguistics professor or as an anthropological student, I'm not sure that I would have been as great as I am as a chef.
Yeah, and you probably found a more tactful way to say, well, will you help me along this path, because yes. You bailed on me when I was getting my PhD.
Exactly.
And was it at Michigan that you met Deann also?
Yes, it is. She was. She went to school there, and then she got a job. She loved Ann Arbor and just thought that she might live there the rest of her life. I enticed her away from Ann Arbor. After we got married, we lived there for a couple of years, and then we moved. That was when we took one little detour and then ended up in Mexico.
I mean, this profession that you're in is notoriously hard on families and couples and everything else. You've been married since 79 is what I read. You would know better than I would, but I mean, you've had this restaurant, the Frontera will celebrate its 40th anniversary next year. Yeah. Like, sort of, what's the secret to your longevity in all of these areas that people really struggle with?
Deann and I decided that if I was going to be in the restaurant business, she needed to be in the restaurant business too, and we need to figure out a way that we could work together and own our own place so that we could call our own shots. And that has worked out really well, because we come to work together and we go home together, but we're not working 9 to 5. We're working 11:30 to 9 o'clock or something like that. But we work the same schedule. That was number one. And then when our daughter was born, we decided to convert a storage room that we had to a family room so that she could be here with us. And of course, that was great until she went to school. But then when she finished, at the end of the day and for school, she would come not to our home, but to the restaurant. And she grew up that way her whole life, that after school she always came to the restaurant. We actually took a little bit more space later on in her life and made that family room into a much bigger room. And I will tell you, we kept it until she graduated from college.
Wow.
Okay, because she did not want us to touch anything about that room, because that was her home away from home, if you will. But that worked really, really well for us, so that we could always be here with her. And she had the sense of being part of the family of the restaurant as well.
Well, it must have stuck, because we're right now in a conference room above Frontera Grill, and she's in the next room.
And she's in the next room, yes.
So
exactly.
Is she the general manager of those restaurants?
Yeah, she worked. We wouldn't call her anymore the general manager, because she doesn't work on the floor hardly at all. But she is the one that is the head of the front of the house group, and I'm the head of the back of the house group. When we first started, she was the floor manager, and I was the working chef on the line, because that's all we could afford to do. And we did that for years and years and years. As we've gotten older, the taxing part of the physical part of it became more taxing, and we decided that it was best for us to work as mentors to all the people that we work with.
Right. So you grew up in a family restaurant, and you have a family restaurant now.
Exactly.
So that's something that's important to you, is having that family sense, even though it's also quite a big business at this point.
Well, it's grown. We still, we have the 4 restaurants on Clark Street, okay? And I love that, because I'm here in all of those restaurants, because they're all sort of part of one restaurant group, if you will, and they all touch each other. So I'm in all of those restaurants every day. And then the other division that we have that is run separately is what you find at the airports, okay? There's Tortas Frontera at the airports, and then we have a few more of them around the country that are called tortazo, and all the same sort of menu. But that is the place that we're putting a lot of growth right now. But at the same time, it's not something that I have to manage on a daily basis, where I'm still here every day for the restaurants on Clark Street.
Yeah, I could not count for you the number of people who, when they're traveling to and from Chicago, I say, you need to go to Tortas Fronteras, and it's the best airport food you'll ever have.
Well, thank you.
And I've had almost every time I travel, it's like if I'm taking a morning flight, I'll get, one of the breakfast tortas, and if it's an afternoon one, I'll get one of the other tortas. I've had the bowls too. I've had the yogurt thing in the morning. It's fantastic.
Thank you. We're very proud of what we were able to do, and I will say I was really proud of the city of Chicago. They kept coming to us and saying, "We want you to open up something there," and I was like, "Not on your life. I don't." It just seemed weird to me to have a place that we weren't running, and so they set us down with the provider that ran that whole terminal. That was Terminal 1 at the beginning, and said, "Okay, what would it take for you to come to the airport?" And I told them about the ingredients that we work with and all of the recipes that we work with that would give our flavor. And the city of Chicago turned to HMS hosts and said, make that happen. And so we were very, very lucky that the city was behind us. And then what obviously HMS host has learned with that is that, we were offering something really different than what other people were offering at the airport. And people like that. And we have these big signs up that tell you where our food comes from, because we want transparency in all of that. It's not processed food. We're actually cooking food out there.
Well, I'm not going to name names, but there are some big name chefs who have their names on airport restaurants, and they're not necessarily reflective of their skills as chefs. and whereas with this, it really is like, if you're gonna, you could come to Joko and get the next step up, but it's reflective of the kind of food that you make, and that's part of what's impressive about it.
That's exactly what we were going for, and I will say that I knew right from the very beginning that we had to have a team that went out there once or twice a week to check every one of our units out there to make sure that they were upholding our standards, they got all the seasonings right, and that sort of thing. To me, that is a very important part of being at the airport. But a lot of chefs, I think, almost think that it's like, it's a set it and forget it kind of thing. You just give them some recipes and they'll make it. But I thought there'll be a lot of people that will come through Chicago, and that's the only taste of Frontera that they will have. So I want to make sure that it is exactly right and that they are impressed with that. And so far, it's been really good. We've been almost 15 years out there now.
Wow. So listeners, if you're in Terminal 1, it's in the B concourse.
Yes.
In Terminal 3, where I've been more often in the American Airlines area, it's right at that kind of like
the split,
where the H and the K split off, and you kind of go to the left. That's a great one. I think there's one in the International,
and
but
there's
I've not
one
had that
in 5. And just when you get out of TSA, the checkpoint, you will turn to the left, and we're just 20 steps down the way.
There you go. So yes, that's your public service announcement for that. No, there's so many things that you've done that are, like, to me, like the best of what they do, like the airport food. When you opened Joko and you had like the 6 different bean to chocolate, hot chocolates, and some were with the water and some were with the milk. It was a classic and the authentic, and the Azteca, I think, was one with that little spice. And when I would walk from the train station to the Tribune Tower, especially in the winter, I would always kind of come by this way. And when it was open for breakfast, and I would just get, stop in and get a cup of this different hot chocolate, and it was like, it's fantastic.
Nice. Yeah, we're really proud of that program because we actually import cacao that's grown in Mexico. Mexico is a net importer of cacao, so it's really hard to get cacao out of Mexico. But we work with this one company that grows it in Tabasco, and then they work with growers in Tabasco, and then they amass it, they put it all together, and they have an export license. And so we buy from them, and they ship it directly to us from Mexico. And then we do all of the roasting of the cacao, the winnowing, the grinding, so it tastes super fresh, and we're very proud of that.
There's a complexity to it. There's this depth to it, and hot chocolate. I've had really great, rich hot chocolate and sipping chocolate, but this is one. Even if you have the one that's made with water, you feel like you're having this rich, deep, complex drink, and it's not so sickly sweet either.
No. I learned that in Oaxaca, because Oaxaca is a place that if you're downtown and you're at the 20 de Noviembre market, right on the back of that market is a whole street of chocolate grinders. And oh my God, it smells so good when you walk into that street. But what I learned was that if you fresh grind chocolate and you don't process it too much, in other words, it's going to have a little texture to it. It's going to give you that complexity of flavor. And what everybody's so used to with European style chocolate is that it's very smooth and it melts on your tongue into complete smoothness. Actually, that process takes away some of the complexity of the chocolate. And so it's very exciting to me to be able to offer a different face of chocolate, because it is very complex and very, very aromatic. It just jumps up out of the glass to greet you.
And then at some point you formed this whole other Frontera Foods division.
Yes.
And
another one of my hobbies.
Yeah. So the salsas are fantastic. You actually had, and I think I got discontinued, unfortunately, but the granola.
Yes.
That was like my go-to breakfast thing in the morning, because it had the little cacao in there too,
Yes.
and the peanut.
It's like my favorite granola in the whole wide world, and it was made by the Milk and Honey people here.
Right.
So, because in Mexico, a lot of people don't know this, but granola is a really big deal, and breakfast can include granola, and it's very, it's not processed. A lot of the granola in the U.S. is processed to make it more shelf stable, but the stuff that you find in Mexico is not. And so I've always loved Mexican granola, and the closest thing I ever had to it was this Milk and Honey original. And I just got in touch with them and said, could we do a project together, because I want to make it with Mexican ingredients in it, the typical things that you would find in Mexico, and some of that the cacao nibs in there. And they made it, and we loved it. And then they just got tired of their business, and they didn't sell their business. They closed their business.
Right, I know.
Because I was hoping that they were going to sell it to somebody else I could work with. But it was all literally handmade, just on big sheet pans in ovens. And I thought it was the best granola I'd ever had, and I was super happy to work with them. But now, unfortunately, we don't have that in our roster.
Yeah, the original Milk and Honey was really good too. So
yes, exactly.
Someone else, if someone's listening, they pick up the mantle from Milk and Honey.
Yeah,
really great.
Exactly.
Granola. You opened Topolobampo a few years after.
Just two and a half after we opened Frontera. It was like at the end of '89 in November, and we jumped on it really fast. I'm watching a lot of the young chefs now who are opening their sort of flagship, their first restaurant, and then within 2 years they have another one, and then the next year they have another one, and so it's a pretty aggressive growth to do that kind of stuff. But if we wanted to take this space next to Frontera, we had to act on it right then, because
so that just became available.
It became available, and we were like, okay, we got to do. Remember, Frontera did not include what is now the Frontera bar. It was just that one little room with 65 seats in it. That was it. We had no bar or anything like that. So when we opened Topolobampo, the front part of Topolobampo was our bar. We made it into a bar, and then the back was Topolobampo only with 40 seats in it. And we're sort of back to that now. It's a slightly different organization of things, but it wasn't until a number of years later that the space that is now the Frontera bar opened up, and we were able to take that one.
Did you have to face any skepticism over fine dining that's Mexican food at that point?
Oh, did we ever?
Yeah.
It's very interesting that the day that we opened Frontera Grill, the first table that came in, it was 4 people. They sat down, opened the menus, closed the menus, got up, and they said, "This isn't Mexican food. You will be out of business in 6 months."
That was your first table?
That was our first table.
Wow.
Now, granted, we were not doing Mexican-American food that you could find in the chain restaurants at all. You could find vestiges of what we were doing in the mom and pop places that dot the Chicago neighborhoods and stuff, but usually just one or two dishes that were like, oh, this is a specialty of the area that we come from in Mexico, that kind of thing. But it wasn't like the whole menu was these regional specialties.
Right.
And we changed our menu at the beginning of Frontera every week. And we had a roster of a dozen dishes that stayed on, but then we changed about 7 or 8 dishes every week just to show people what the breadth of Mexican food was. And we put on the name, on the title of it, where it came from, what the region was, and that sort of thing. And it was very aggressive, but I think it really put us on the map. It said that what we were doing was to really reflect or shine a light on the incredible regional cooking of Mexico that most people in the United States don't ever know. And I will say, I think coupled with the fact that I take my cooking very seriously, and I want to make sure that whatever we're cooking is exactly right and really reflects those regional flavors and tastes really good. If I think it's too bizarre of a flavor that you would have to be raised there to appreciate it, I won't put it on the menu. I really want to make people's experience here maybe unusual because they've never heard of some of these dishes, but that when they leave, they go, that was good.
So you had Frontera doing that, and then Topolobampo raised things to another level.
Yes.
Did you feel like there were things that you wanted to do that you couldn't do at Frontera because it was a more, aimed at a general population, and you thought there is room for fine dining in this area in Chicago and, this cuisine?
Very definitely that. My goal. So when I was living in Mexico City, my wife and I loved to go to some of these fine dining Mexican restaurants. Most people that are listening to this that have been to Mexico City recently, because it is the hottest destination on the planet, will think Pujol and Quintonil and that sort of modern versions of Mexican food. No, these were not modern places. They were places like San Angel Inn and the Hacienda de los Morales, and a few other places that were really lovely fine dining places. And from the very beginning of Frontera Grill, I had in my mind that I eventually wanted to do one of those kind of places. So my favorite of them was San Angel, and we decided that we were going to make Topolobampo look like San Angel. So we had hand-hammered copper chargers, and we had the same kinds of dishes that they served on there, the hand-blown blue glasses and all that sort of stuff. We wanted it to really echo what we loved about San Angel Inn, and then we started off with a menu that was a bit more modern, I will say, than what you would find at San Angel, and but it was basically standing on the shoulders of Frontera Grill.
Right.
And it was saying, okay, folks, we're going to take you to the next level. Remember, Frontera is fast-paced. I couldn't do very refined dishes on that menu because we were so busy from the second we opened until the second we closed that we were just pumping out the food. So we had to streamline some of the procedures that we used to get the food on the plate. But then in Topolobampo, we could take our time with the plates, and that's really what I wanted to do. But basically, it was based on the same sauces and such. I remember very vividly, I think we'd been open a couple of months in Topolobampo, and a regular customer from Frontera had come to try Topolo for the first time. And she said, wow, the flavor of the sauces are just so much more refined in Topolo than they are in Frontera. Little did she know, it was exactly the same sauces that she was eating in Frontera, but other elements on the plate were more refined. But it was interesting to me that just in the quieter environment, without the hustle and bustle you find in Frontera, that she was able to perceive more depth in the sauces. So that taught me a big lesson.
Was that restaurant successful from the start as well?
Yeah, it was. Very, very successful.
And how much of an advantage has it been to you? I mean, you talked about this earlier, but the fact that you have these restaurants, but really they're connected. They're like, right,
Yeah.
you could walk in and like you go to this desk for Frontera and that desk for Topolobampo.
Yeah. It makes it really easy on us in a lot of ways. From the management side, you can have one general manager that's managing basically all of the restaurants. And then we have basically floor managers that take care of the day-to-day things.
And Topolobampo, as I understand, became sort of a favorite date spot for Barack and Michelle Obama.
We were very happy about that. The first time they came in, I had no idea how to treat them because some politicians like to sit in the best table in the place so that everybody sees them, and other people want to keep their heads down and just sort of go incognito. And so I put Michelle and Barack in the most visible table in the restaurant, and at the end of the meal they let me know that that's not where they wanted to sit. And it was like, and then
now, was he president already, or was he a senator? Or
no, he was a senator.
Okay.
And so they said they would come back, and if they were going to come back, that they would really like to have a place that was a little bit more secluded. And I took them right to the table and said, how would this be? And that became their table from then on.
There you go.
And then after they came a couple of times during the campaign, and then they came after the election. They came once, and then he's been back a couple more times, but now they belong to the world, and they live in Washington most of the time.
Right.
So
he's got this library opening up.
I know.
So he's got to be
hoping,
here a bit.
and he's announced his new chef for that, who's a guy I really like too, and I think that it's going to be great. Hopefully, it will be a destination both to see the library and also to eat there.
Now, were you considered for White House chef in 2008?
No, that was just people making up stories, fake news as they call it.
Yeah. So
no, I would never have. I couldn't have done it. First of all, I'm very niche chef. I mean, I make Mexican food, okay?
Right.
So it would be dumb to put me in the White House for that kind of thing when you have to do all these elaborate state dinners and stuff that's really outside of my wheelhouse. I did get a chance to go there and do one of those state dinners.
You did one for the Mexican president.
For the Mexican president, and that was like one of the greatest events of my life. It taught me a lot of lessons and so forth, but Chris Comerford, who was just recently retired, she was an amazing chef, and Filipino born, I believe, and she had all of the right skills to be a great White House chef. She had no ego at all, super good at what she did, and could make that place run like a Swiss watch.
Doing the state dinner for President Felipe Calderon and President Obama and the White House, were your nerves high on that? Was that like a fraught thing to do, or was it like, oh, this is like what I do, this is great?
More the latter than the former. Of course, we were anxious, but we didn't do any food that we hadn't done 1,000 times already. Right. So we kind of felt good about that. The hard thing was that if we were going to do a dinner like that, we would usually travel with all of our sauces made here in our restaurants on Clark Street, because it's really hard to make that stuff in other people's kitchens, and our kitchens here are set up for it. So we had to actually get the guy that does all the procurement for the White House to get us all the ingredients to make Oaxacan black mole. And man, I stood at that stove in the White House kitchen for 10 hours without a break.
So you did make the sauces there?
I had to, because they wouldn't let us ship anything in. That's the way you have to do it. They get you the ingredients.
Someone could mess with it or something.
And that's exactly what it is. And it was a kind of funny thing, because they were having trouble getting one of the chilies for that. And I was sending, to the procurement officer, we actually sent him the chilies and all of that sort of stuff. And I said, if you want to, I can have somebody buy them here in Chicago and ship them to you, and then you can take them to the general place where they do it. And finally, we had to end up doing that because I couldn't find them in Washington, D.C.
Did Barack and Michelle Obama say, oh, we want you to make these favorite dishes of ours?
No, they let me do the whole thing. We worked with Chris Comerford, the chef, to do it. And the woman that was sort of the head of those kinds of events at the White House, and they flew here to Chicago to eat in our restaurant, and we put together a menu while they were here, and that worked out good. And they really wanted me to do this very, very simple It's really in Mexico. It's like a street sweet from the Yucatan that is jicama and tangerines. And I mean, it's so utterly simple. And I said, no, it's like, I'm a better chef than that. I don't want to go to the White House and make something like that. And they said, just trust us. This will be the hit of the thing, because a lot of the people that come won't be very adventurous eaters, and so they'll love something like this that they can just understand right away and enjoy.
Right. So and you worked in the White House kitchen. Is the White House kitchen like pretty good kitchen? Is it laid out in a logical way? Decent equipment?
Oh yeah, no, it's very nice, but what most people don't understand, it's very small, and it only does the state dinners. Well, it's the private sort of residence kitchen. So whoever is in residency, there are up on the second floor where the president lives, there's a small kitchen up there, but not a very nice one. And so daily they make food for the first family in the White House kitchen, and then they do all state dinners, and they do every day during the Christmas time, they invite different groups every single day, and they have cookies and punch and different things like that they have to make out of that kitchen. But it's a very small kitchen, but it's very, very well put together and has just the right equipment in just the right spots.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yes.
So chefs had some input into that.
Absolutely. It's really nice. And when we were there, they had just redone that kitchen a few years before that, and I was super worried that so I was toasting chilies. Okay, toasting chilies, for anyone listening to this that's ever done that, has to understand very clearly that it makes a lot of aroma. Let's just call it aroma. I'll use a nice word for it. It's really quite amazing that it can also make you cough in the back of your throat. And so before I decided on the full menu, I had asked the chef of the White House, tell me what your hood system is like. And she said it's very good. We have a new hood just as of last year, and it's really good, because I was really worried that they would come storming down from the West Wing and say, what is that awful smell that's coming all the way down here? But that's why it took so long to make that mole, because I had to toast the chilies like one by one, so that the aroma wouldn't get out of the kitchen.
Wow. Speaking of cooking in other kitchens, you've done Top Chef Masters, which you won.
Yes.
You've done Iron Chef America. What are those kitchens like? Is it did you get into those and you're like, well, I'll do what I can, or are they pretty well equipped?
Oh, they're pretty well equipped. When you're doing competition shows, so much of it is about speed and knowing how to make good food while cutting lots of corners, okay? Because oftentimes you don't have enough time to make the dish you want to make, so you have to figure out, how can I make something really delicious but cut all these corners while I'm doing it and still make it come out and look and taste delicious?
Did you know you would be good at that, or was it like, oh, I can do this in a competitive way as well as in a business culinary
way? A kind of funny thing. No, I'd never been on a competition show. Well, let's see. No, I had done Iron Chef before, but that's a really bizarre one. It's not it's going to be one of 2 or 3 ingredients before you go, and we had made up I was working with a team of 2 other chefs with me, and we had practiced to make sure we could get all of our dishes done in the right amount of time in somebody else's kitchen. So we had already worked on that. So I had sort of gotten a little bit of that. And then I had done a competition show that was on Food Network that was one of those market basket things where literally you are given a basket and you have to make 2 dishes or 3 dishes out of it. And I never wanted to do that because I thought I would fail miserably. And then they said, said, but what if we put you up against Jacques Pepin, one of the greatest technicians in the world? And I said, oh, it would be a real honor and pleasure to lose to Jacques Pepin. Okay, so I said I would go do that one, and I actually won one of those. We did 2 shows, and I won one, and he won one. I think they were just being nice to me, if you want to know the truth. But anyway, I knew that I could do it, sort of, and I will tell you that, like, walking down to the Walgreens and waiting on to have a prescription filled or something, one of my favorite games to do is to say, if I had to make dinner out of the food at the Walgreens, and I had to make it sort of be nice, what would I do? And so I was always playing those sort of simple mind games, not actually cooking, but playing it as a mind game. And so I knew I liked playing that game, and I figured that I would be able to do it okay. But they sort of drugged me to Top Chef Masters, screaming and yelling, because I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do anything that was going to keep me there for a long time. Because my world is very busy, and I had to go there, and then I won my first round, and it was like, I'm going to get stuck here.
You got on a roll.
And then after that, I had to go back and do all the rest of the show. But it was that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I tell you, when I came home, I had a slight case at least of PTSD, and I would wake up screaming in the middle of the night. And my wife was like, oh, what are we going to do? But I mean, it went away after a month or two. But every time I would go into the kitchen, I would be cooking like a crazy banshee or something. I would just be moving so fast, and she would say, calm down. The competition's done. Calm down. Just enjoy the cooking.
Did it actually affect the way you cooked afterwards, having done it under that kind of pressure?
It affected my own self-confidence is what it really affected, because I never went to culinary school, even though I grew up in a restaurant and felt very comfortable in a commercial situation. I never had the opportunity to go to culinary school and really learn, what the history of cuisine is and all these different styles of cooking and so forth. And so I always felt like I didn't have as much preparation as perhaps I would like to have had to be a good chef in the United States. But after winning Top Chef Masters, I had a lot more confidence. Because I was up against people who had really good educational backgrounds.
Right. But you had also won, Outstanding Chef from James Beard Foundation. Yeah. It was 2005. And then 2017, Topolobampo wins Outstanding Restaurant in the country. So you're probably pretty confident by now, I would bet.
I feel okay about what I do.
That's
yes,
good.
I feel
I'm
okay.
Glad. We just want to look in the mirror. I like myself. I'm okay. I'm good at what I do.
I tell you, I have struggled so much with imposter syndrome my whole life. And I was really thrilled one time to be listening to a podcast and hear Michelle Obama say that every day in the White House, she felt like an imposter.
Wow.
And what that meant was, and I could echo the exact same thing, is that you deal with it by showing up early, being more prepared than anybody else, and really doing an incredibly good and thorough job. And that's the way that I could handle that imposter syndrome and still stay afloat.
Wow. Yeah, if you have it, everyone's got it. So, I saw you on stage at Cascabel, Looking Glass Theater, 2012. You were dancing very well, and you were acting, and they fed us during the show.
Yeah.
That was like an amazing. It was a different kind of dinner theater for sure. But
we don't like the word dinner theater because
that's what I'm saying. It was
dinner
like
theater.
Actual dinner.
It was actually
actual theater, not dinner theater.
Yeah, well,
that was my point.
We will say that this was a story about a meal, and as the audience, you got to eat that whole meal. But the narrative was all about this chef preparing a certain meal,
right.
And it was such a fun show to do. I was on the writing team for that, and so we were able to. I had an idea of doing it, and the immersive theater is one of my favorite things in the world, where the audience is sort of like right in the middle of everything. And when I saw what Looking Glass Theater Company did with the telling the tale of Hephaestus with circus performers, I got to know the team that wrote that and conceived of it and produced it for Looking Glass, and that was the group that I worked with to do Cascabel. And they were really good because we had circus performers in Cascabel, and I mean, right. It was a beautiful story, one of unrequited love that turns out good in the end. Sort of, as we said, it was very much like some musicals that you see where there's a conflict and a problem and then that gets resolved at the end. We used that same sort of structure for Cascabel. And then we remounted it the second time down at Goodman in the Owen Theater there. We had a little bit more height in the theater, so we were able to do some more wonderful things with the circus performers there, and we had more space in the back for our kitchen because we had to make a kitchen in the theater to serve. If you can imagine, this is one of the first things that we learned in trying to mesh food into theater where you're serving your entire audience. So we could do 190 at the Owen Theater down at the Goodman, and we had to serve everyone a hot entree in 4 minutes at this one juncture. And so it had to be, we call it the Hogwarts moment, where it was like the food just appeared there, and we had to get it all in front of all the people really fast, because that was the big holdup, is that when you're telling a story, you can't say, okay, it's going to take 15 minutes to serve all the 190 people. We had 4 minutes to get it down. Crazy. And so it was it taught us a lot about serving good food fast, I will tell you.
So have you thought about doing another show after that?
Oh, yeah. And so now I work with a different group of people, and we just finished writing our third immersive piece. One of them saw the light of day, the one that we did right after COVID. It was a little bit too early in the coming back to theater moment after COVID. Most of the theater companies are still struggling a lot, but I think it's coming back now. But we did a immersive piece called Recipe for Disaster, and it was written in a classical farce style. So it was a lot about mistaken identities or people pretending to be other people, and it was a story of one chef that is presenting a new menu to influencers, and the whole audience is influencers. And so, but with a whole bunch of plants from the actors that were part of this team. And so we did that, and that ran for about 6 months. It was fun. It was very light and fun and flat. It was basically where everything that had gone wrong in our restaurants all happened on one night, whereas they were spread out over years here at our restaurant, but we packed in all of the stuff that had happened over the years and that would make a really funny tale, and we did that all on one night.
And you're working on another one now.
Yeah, we're just finishing one. We're actually it's going to be done at American University in Washington D.C. One of our writing team is a theater professor there, and so it's scheduled for next fall. Yes, and so it will be produced there. It's a really interesting experience of hearing a story told in a random way, and what you take away from it if you learn this bit of information before that one, or vice versa, and what do you think of the characters. So it's an interesting way of thinking about how timing really affects our understanding of people and who they are, what they do, and all that sort of stuff. So this is in the very first act of this thing, the audience chooses the order in which the scenes come. Oh. And the second one, it's done by a big wheel, so it's totally random.
And are you starring in that then?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to act in this. I was in Recipe for Disaster for a while. I love doing theater. I grew up in theater, so I love going back to it. My wife's got a master's in theater. My daughter graduated in theater at NYU, so we're a big theater family.
Nice. Do you have is there any other like major creative itch that you're still looking to scratch, whether it's a new type of restaurant you still want to open or some other project?
Well, I write. I've done 10 books, and I love the writing process. We're sitting here at my desk with all these books surrounding me because
it's great.
This is all what I'm working on right now. So I'm working on a big book on Mexican street food, and that I'm not quite sure when that's going to come out. But also, I have a tale to tell that is a memoir. And so I've written basically one full pass at that, but it's not the way I want it to be. And now I'm just starting to do a rewrite, but a major rewrite, meaning that I want to tell the tale. I got all the details down, and now I want to really craft it into a nice piece.
Well, I look forward to both of those.
Thank you.
For sure. And just to go back to COVID real quick, I mean, obviously COVID was horrible for, this industry. And, it's been hard on theater as well. Where are you now compared to before COVID? And like, what was sort of the permanent or just lingering changes that happened over that period?
I will say that we are about to get back to where we were pre-COVID in terms of number. The downtown area in Chicago is really different than it was pre-COVID. Yes. And there's still a lot of vacancy. I've heard anywhere from 25 to 45% of vacancy in the Loop area. And of course, that means that we have a much smaller group to pull from. And so we're about there. The one thing that is harder is that the costs are all so much higher than they were pre-COVID. And even though we might be getting back to the dollars, the gross numbers that we were doing pre-COVID, the costs of everything are just so much higher. So it's really hard to make a living. If I was starting all over right now, which I'm not planning on doing, but if I was starting all over now, I would build it in a very different way based on what this economy needs and wants. And I probably wouldn't be downtown because we're an independent restaurant. We're not part of a big chain or anything like that. And the downtown rents are really high compared to what I could get in the neighborhoods. So I'd probably be a neighborhood restaurant if I was starting over.
Yeah, I was curious about if you were sort of starting now, like what the challenges and how it would be different. Labor market's different too, right? I mean,
that's the biggest difference. Yeah, we can deal with the higher food costs by playing around with recipes and doing all kinds of things like that, being really creative in the kitchen, which I'm very thankful to COVID that we had the opportunity to be more creative in thinking about how can we run this restaurant with higher food costs. We couldn't run them as higher food costs, but everything went up. And so we had to figure out how we could be more judicious in how we ran our kitchens. And so I feel really good about that part of it, but labor's it's so much higher than it was. I mean, literally, during COVID, it went up about 25% in a matter of a couple months.
In terms of how much people get paid?
Yeah. And there weren't people that wanted to come out and work either. And so that put a lot of stress, and it's never gone back. And so I will say that just the cost of rent and labor and food and all that, you have to really know what you're doing and get a good deal in a neighborhood someplace as an independent restaurant to be able to work well.
Was there more of a sense also when you opened that, not that this makes it the good old days or not, but that people who were working in kitchen or front of the house there was a sort of different level of, oh yeah, no, I'll stay till 1 a.m. and do this or that, as opposed to now where people are like a little more concerned about work-life balance and don't want to work more than the certain number of hours a week or something?
Well, I will say you're coming from the perspective of Hell's Kitchen and the Bear and all of that sort of stuff, where they're really giving you that that's the way kitchens are and so forth. I have never worked in a restaurant like that, and I have never run a restaurant like that.
You and Charlie Trotter ran your restaurants very differently.
Very differently. And there was that group of chefs, and it is a very small group of chefs that yell and scream and require that people stay until 1 a.m. doing a second round of cleaning on something because they found a dust particle or something like that. Okay, that's a very, very minor part of our. It just happens to be the people that get the most notoriety. Okay, so everybody thinks that that's what all chefs are going for. But I will tell you, because of my needing to have work-life balance, because my wife had never worked full-time in a restaurant until we opened ours, and she had worked on the periphery and she had worked in my catering business, but she had never worked full-time in a restaurant. And so when we opened Frontera, you'll remember we were only open 5 days a week, so that we had a Sunday and Monday together, and then we worked a lot of hours between Tuesday morning and Saturday night, but we wanted some work-life balance for ourselves. And then when our daughter was born, one night a week, we each took her home so that we could have a little break from things and so forth. So we built a work-life balance into our lives from the very beginning. But I will say that now, post-COVID, that job interviews are very different than they used to be. Oftentimes now, people will sit down and the person interviewing for the job will lead the conversation. They'll say, okay, tell me what my hours are going to be, and tell me what kind of benefits you're going to give me, and tell me, what my salary is going to be, and I'll tell you whether or not that meshes with what I want for my life, okay? So we have always been, if you come into our restaurant and say you want to be a chef and you want to work from 9 to 3 in the afternoon, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I will tell you, we make no money during that time, so it's probably not going to work for you to work with us, okay? We're not running a coffee shop here, and even if it was a coffee shop, you'd have to show up at 7 in the morning or maybe earlier, that kind of thing. So it's those people get disillusioned pretty quickly about working in restaurants, but it's a different approach for a lot of the people that work with us. But we have very, very long-term employees. We have people that have worked 37 years here. Wow. And so it's like we have created an environment that I think is a positive environment to work in. We're constantly challenging everybody by keeping things fresh and changing things, change our menus all the time, as well as many other things. And I will say that I think is what has kept a lot of people here. We say if you've only worked here for 5 years, that you're still the new kid. And for us, that means that we can make really good, consistent food because we're not turning over our staff all the time.
Do you know how many chefs who have worked with you who have opened their own restaurants?
I wish I could tell you the exact number, but it's something around 12 or 14, something like that. We're very proud of that because we consider ourselves a training ground here. We have open book finance here so that everybody on the staff can know exactly where we are, but all of the management staff looks at the statements with us every month, and we go over all the details of that. I train chefs how to be mentors to the cooks that work with them and how to work with different learning styles and that sort of thing. I will say say that it's that's my greatest satisfaction, is looking at the family tree basically and saying that, out of this kitchen, we have taught a lot of really, really good people. And when you talk to them, most of them say, we really learned how to run a restaurant, and the consistency in a restaurant especially, because that's what we focus on a lot. Yeah, no, I mean, my impression is that aside from changing dining in these restaurants, those ripples in the pond, all these other restaurants, they came out of Frontera, they came out of this, and so that family tree, and you're able to embrace that. Oh, yes, very definitely. I want that. We didn't have it for like the first 10 or 15 years that we were in existence, and I thought, I'm doing something wrong. I'm doing something wrong, because we haven't had any people come through here and then go open their own restaurants. We, at that point, put a even greater emphasis on training and making sure that everybody that came out of here represented us in a really good way. Early next year, 40th anniversary. Yes. How are you going to celebrate? That is such a live question here on our premises. I'm not quite. It's going to be big, okay, and it'll probably be a number of different events that we were having. Just right here next to me, I have written down all these ideas that I could do, and the list is just so long. We can't do them all, but I was thinking, I need to invite all of my Top Chef friends to come back. Sure. And this city is filled with people who have done extremely well on Top Chef, so I could invite them to be part of a Top Chef meal. So we've got lots of ideas of different things that we're going to do. I do know it will include a lot of the people who have gone on from here to open their own restaurants coming back to cook with us. So we've got lots of ideas going on, but nothing that quite I'm ready to unveil. What's the wackiest one that you're not going to use, so you can tell us? Let me look here. Well, one of them here was to go. So the wackiest one, because I think it would be really hard to pull off, is that the very first Best New Chefs that Food and Wine magazine did. They do that thing of Best New Chefs every year. So the first cohort was in 1988, and I was in that cohort along with Thomas Keller from French Laundry and Daniel Ballud from Restaurant Danielle, and we had a guy from Hammersley from Boston, and Brightson from New Orleans, all people who are still have restaurants going. And I thought, man, a reunion of that first one would just be amazing. I think that would be very hard to pull off. But it's not that wacky. That sounds great. There are a couple of the people that have sort of evaporated nowadays, and several of them have passed on. But I thought it would be a really fun thing to do, a reunion of the 88 class of Best New Chefs. Well, I support. It doesn't sound that wacky to me. Chef Bayless, thank you so much for A, just the decades of wonderful food and experiences I've had through you, and B, for sitting with us and doing this now. This is really great. It's been a real pleasure for me. That's all for episode 220 of Caropop. Thanks so much to Chef Rick Bayless for serving up this excellent conversation on top of his decades of brilliant food. You can experience his cuisine in all its glory at Frontera Grill, Topolobampo, Joko, and Bar Sotano, all interconnected on the same River North block in Chicago. Go to fronteragrill.com to check out the menus and to make reservations there, and there's also a pull-down menu to explore the other Frontera restaurants. These include the Tortas Fronteras locations at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport and the Tortazo Mexican street food outlets, now open in Chicago's Willis Tower, the Old Orchard Mall in Skokie, Illinois, Harrah's in Joliet, and Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, Nevada. Although Bayless and his partners sold the Frontera Foods division to Conagra in 2016, you still can find his salsas and other products in stores nationwide. Subscribe to Bayless's YouTube channel, follow him on Instagram, and there's a Chef Rick Bayless Facebook page too. Caropop is produced by Chris Swake, who appreciates a holy mole. I'm sorry about that. Thanks to all who support Caropop. If you'd like to throw something into the Caropop kitty, we'd be much appreciative, and I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Please go to caropop.com. Thanks so much for listening and being here.
I'm Mark Caro. Please follow Caropop on the so-called socials at Caropopcast. You can follow me as well at Mark Caro at MarkCaro. Please share this episode, subscribe here and on YouTube, tell your friends, and return next week for another Caropop conversation. Thanks.